Welcome to Disability Empowerment Now, pre-season 5. I'm your host, Keith Murphy Dickinsini. Today I'm with Caren J, a crisis mobile team specialist negotiator. Caren, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Keith. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, thank you. Usually I'd start off by how we know each other, but we're gonna skip that like a ping pong ball in a pinball machine, if you don't mind. Uh, we're just gonna get straight to you and your connection to working with the disability community because that is something that I found immediately interesting and I knew next to nothing. So, how did you get involved in this line of work and what's your connection to the disability community of Arizona?
Well, I knew when I was 13 that I wanted to work in the mental health field. So I went about doing that by getting my bachelor's degree from the University of Arizona. And then I went pretty much right into the field afterwards. And I have worked in various aspects of the social service and behavioral health communities, both in Phoenix and Tucson. And I did spend almost 20 years working within the foster care system. But for the last 10 and a half years, I've worked on the crisis mobile team. And I have found that this is really a great position for me to be in because, every day is different. And, when you ask about how I have come to be connected with the disability community, well, it varies from day to day because every call is different. And sometimes we do get calls for people with autism and other, areas within other areas of the mental health and behavioral health spectrum. So it just varies. I have actually had a couple of calls recently with people with autistic disorder. And, we go about being of the most help we can be for any given individual that we are called to help.
Well, you've lived quite a professional life. That's very incredible. What type of training do they give you in relating to people with disabilities, particularly those on the autism spectrum?
Well, last year and more recently, about a month or so ago, we actually redid that original training. The original training was in person through the Autism Society of Southern Arizona, and both agencies that provide crisis mobile team services were at that training, and we were given a big duffel bag of various accoutrements to be able to help people on the autism spectrum, help them feel calmer in the midst of whatever crisis they're experiencing. And we did go through a very good training on what behavioral characteristics to be looking for and how to work the best in, in helping calm people and relate to people with autism. So I thought it was a really helpful training, actually, because that definitely has not been a specialty of mine.
And how long has the Crisis Mobile Team been dealing with people with disabilities, not only on the autism spectrum, but across the board? Do you find a lot of people with disabilities who require the crisis management mobile team?
Yes, I would say that we do get a large number of calls for people with, you know, some kind of disability, whether it's an intellectual disability or even a traumatic brain injury, as well as people with autism. So I have actually been working on the Crisis Mobile team for 10 and a half years, and I was one of the original people hired to work in the Tucson office. So to answer your question, I have been interacting with people with various disabilities for the 10 and a half years now.
So, did you ever think you would be a part of this team for 10.5 years? Usually, what I ask here is what keeps bringing you back to the job? Because money can only do so much, can only pay the bills so much, and
Right.
crisis management doesn't sound like a low stress kind of job, not by any measure. And so, what brings you back to this very complex but important mental health care field?
Well, Keith, I think for me the answer is very basic in that, like I said, I felt at the age of 13 that I was meant to be out there helping other people with various issues. And as it turns out, I'm very good in a crisis. I'm one of those people who may get overwhelmed with, putting their clothes away on their bed, but I am very calm in the midst of a crisis, especially when it's somebody else's crisis. So it gives me great joy to be able to represent our community because I love Tucson. Like I said, I went to U of A. Um, and I love the Wildcats. And I'm very happy to be able to represent our agency and be someone who is part of a solution. And I love the concept of the win-win, getting to the win-win and a positive outcome. So I have, gotten really adept, I think. I'd like to think at helping people, resolve the issues that are going on for them. And, we are with someone for a pretty short window of time. So, it comes down to being able to establish rapport
Yeah.
pretty quickly with someone. And, sometimes are more difficult than others, depending on what's actually going on with somebody. Because one of the other very common issues that we get called out to help people with is substance use.
Yeah.
So, when we're dealing with someone who is being affected by whatever substance, it can be a bit more difficult to gain that rapport. So we have to really be able to read the individual situation as it's happening.
So, w- w- what were you like as a teenager? Because you keep bringing back up that at age 13, you knew that you wanted to help people. Uh, how did you get such maturity and insight at 13? Because I'm sure every parent of teenagers will be like, they're so immature. They're my kids. I love them to death, but they're so
Mhm.
immature. What the hell happened to you as a teenager where you have that profound insight that really shaped the rest of your professional career?
Well, it's funny you should ask that, Keith, because I I can tell a very funny story about how I went to visit my aunt and uncle in July of 1976 when I was 13, and it was the bicentennial. And I was very much looking forward to being able to go from New Jersey into Manhattan because there was a huge celebration for the 4th of July. Unfortunately, my uncle refused to drive that distance because he thought there'd be a lot of traffic. And I, at that point on July 4th, 1976, decided that I wanted to live to be 113 so that I could be around for the tricentennial, which is now 50 years away. So I've made it halfway there to my goal. And something just kind of clicked at that point. Not to mention the fact that when I was in 8th grade, I had a huge crush on our school psychologist. And I started to think, I want to do what he's doing because he's really cool. And I went from wanting to be an orthodontist to going into psychology. So between the two, having that very long-term goal all of a sudden at 13, and then wanting to go into psychology, I think, I was a very weird 13-year-old because how many 13-year-olds do you know, especially now, like you said? And I think it is a generational kind of thing because the teenagers of my generation are quite different than the teenagers now.
Yeah.
And I do meet enough teenagers and people in their early 20s and 30s to know that there is a difference there.
Wow. So are you native to Arizona or did you move here uh, later in life?
I actually moved from Brooklyn, New York to
Ah,
Phoenix when I was 10. So I did kind of
that's a
mature.
big
Yeah.
move
Yeah. Yeah. So I
to
would have to say,
do when you were 10 years old.
yes. Yeah. But during the course of time that I spent in Brooklyn, I would say that there was a lot more maturing going on there than there would have been if I had been born in Phoenix.
Yeah. Yeah. Brooklyn and really New York as a whole really toughens you up, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
it's a very grit making state, really, or
Hmm.
else it will run you over and it won't apologize.
Right.
In fact, the last thing it will ever do is apologize for running you over or into the ground. But
Right.
the transportation system is
Yes.
so beautiful and
Hmm.
unique. The whole
Yeah.
country should be like the subway in New
Right.
York. Uh,
Right. Yeah.
so we share mental health in a way that I hope you don't mind me talking about.
Oh, no, no, not at all.
Uh, yeah, I should have checked with you before I rolled the tape, uh, so to speak. So we both went to the same mental health treatment center in Wickenburg, Arizona,
Mm-hmm.
which is about three and a half hours away from Tucson, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
located currently. Uh, it's a treatment center called Meadows Behavioral Health.
Mm-hmm.
And you went there about 10 years ago. Uh,
Yeah, I went in 2012, and the program that I did was actually an outpatient, one of their outpatient workshop programs called Survivors One. And it was a 5-day program where you went to the facility during the day, and then you stay in a motel close by at night. And even those 5 days, I thought, were just really transformative. So, anybody who's able to stay there for the whole 30 or 45-day program, I would think just would have a major, major, breakthrough, so to speak.
Yeah, and I can speak to that because I did actually stay the full 45
Oh, yeah,
days,
that's wonderful.
which was transformative. And Survivors One is actually the most intense week that
Hmm.
they put
Yeah.
you through. Uh, it's a whole campus at Midsville at the Meadows. You're not allowed to leave for 45 days.
Hmm.
There are no pictures, no video, barely any phones,
Hmm.
personal, uh, but and it costs a lot of money. I will not
Yeah.
say how much, but you can imagine how
Right.
much a 45
Yeah.
day stay in a very posh and bougie rehab center.
Yeah.
No, the campus is absolutely incredible. It's like being at a mental health retreat
Hmm.
center. In fact,
Yeah.
that's how I described the whole experience
Hmm.
because that was an easier pill to swallow than being in rehab, being
Hmm.
treat.
Yeah. Yeah.
It it's not trying to sugarcoat it. It's just more palatable for people to understand and to relate to in some ways.
Hmm.
So you were there in 2012, and you must have ran into the head nuts Pia Melanie.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm ridiculously jealous of that because she recently died last year.
Yeah.
And uh, the she didn't found the Meadows, but they adopted her philosophy so much that if you take out her philosophy and if you take out the 12 steps, that place ceases to exist.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just not a functional entity anymore.
Hmm.
And I don't know if they handed out free books when you were there, but they ended up giving everyone a copy of Pierre's first book, which is called Facing Codependent,
Hmm.
which is a word I had vaguely heard throughout my
Hmm.
life, not
Yeah.
really paid any mind to it. Uh, and I'm gonna say most of us are in some ways, whether we know it or not,
Hmm.
codependent. And so
Yeah, I agree.
Pia was way ahead of her time
Hmm.
with uh, her philosophy, her psychology, her training. What was she like that you can remember in person?
She was very approachable. I didn't really get to spend too much time with her, but I remember that she came into the common area where we were eating lunch, and she walked in there, and we got to talk to her for a few minutes. I think, she's a very warm, friendly person. She was at that point. And I began going to CODA meetings shortly after doing Survivors One because, of the impact that her teachings had on me. And I think those are really great groups, actually.
Yeah, yeah. It took me about a month, and why I'm dressed the way I am is because this is what I wore for 45 days with this get up. Uh,
Hmm.
and so it took me about a month, but I went to literally every 12 step group they had,
Hmm.
all the way from AA to Gamblers Anonymous. Now, did
Hmm.
I have any AA in a Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous? No, I didn't. But they encouraged you to
Hmm.
take what you could from every group that
Hmm.
you were allowed to go to. And there were gender specific groups. I
Oh.
think
Hmm.
uh besides Coda, the one that really spoke to me and a lot of the guides was the slaw group, which is sex and love
Hmm.
at addiction
Yeah.
slash avoidance.
Right.
Again, terminology in a group that I had no idea existed. And if someone had pitched me that group as a creation, I would be like, what the hell are you talking about? Really? It's like great ideas. Good luck getting anyone to go to
Yeah.
any of that. So you were there 5 days. I was they're 45 days. We both went through Survivors 1. And
Right.
I got to express my anger and actually be praised for it
Hmm.
by not only the trauma specialists there, but also my peers,
Oh, that's
which
great.
was
Yeah.
a very cathartic but also weird ass experience because I had never expected that. So what Survivors One is for those of our listeners and viewers who have no idea, it's a intensive trauma week which uh, addresses childhood trauma from ages 0 to 17. And it covers everything from sexual abuse to psychological abuse. And the terminologies and what fits under those categories, and there are a lot of categories, trust me, it's very, very eye opening. And then I don't know if they had in 2012 Survivors 2,
Hmm.
which is basically the adult portion of trauma between 18 to now.
Right.
And I really want to do that program because I found Survivors One to be such a kick in the balls that I desperately needed. Uh, and it 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 was such a cathartic experience that I was like, give me more. I must unlock all of
Hmm.
this carried and stored trauma throughout my body and throughout
Hmm.
my psyche. When you were there, doing Survivors One, was Pia actually leading Survivors, or was she more in the background
Yeah.
observing?
She was more in the background. Yeah. Um, so there were various groups going on, as you know, depending on what kind of trauma you were actually there for.
Yeah.
And yeah, as far as Survivors 2 goes, I never got to do that, but it was being offered. It's just that, you know, you have to wait a certain amount of time. I think it's 6 months in between one and two.
6 to 8 months.
Yeah, yeah, and
I'm
they don't offer
gonna,
two as
yeah,
as
yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna make it either my birthday or Christmas present to myself.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
I would
because
love to do it at some point.
yeah, so what spun me off into treatment land is that last September I lost my Dalmatian Pepper, who I had for almost a full decade. And I actually watched her drown in my backyard pool. And that really broke me in more ways than I could have ever prepared for
Mhm.
or known.
Yeah.
She was also much more of a salve and a emotional protection mechanism on four legs
Mhm.
between me and my parents and dealing with the actual trauma we had been burying in the backyard, sweeping under the proverbial rug, as it were.
Mhm.
And so after I went on the spending spree to totally redesign my house because I really needed a total facelift. Uh,
Mhm.
I broke down, and that is where we came to know each other. And you had recommended survivors. Uh, sorry, you had recommended the Meadows to
Yes.
my family and I, and my psychologists had all, no, psychiatrists had also recommended the Meadows.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how hitting rock bottom, or as close to rock bottom as one would want to get, would,
Mhm.
in all quotes,
Yeah.
uh, would want to get to where they know that something radical needs to change in order for them to continue living and doing the work that they love, which is what I'm doing right now. I get to interview people for a
Mhm.
living. Do I have any training? No. Do I have an insatiable, innate curiosity about other people and what makes them tick and why they do what they do? Yes. In fact, if I didn't have that, I wouldn't be able to do my work. So
Mhm.
off to Wickenburg I
Mhm.
went with a very apprehensive nature, like this won't work. It's going to be like all the other
Uh,
programs, and treatment programs get a bad rap because they'll, most of them all adopt a very cookie cutter, one size fits all mentality, uh, where they try to fit you into
mhm.
their program and how they know how to treat people. And with people who are neurodivergent, which is the new term for
Right.
people who think differently or are disabled, uh, in whatever way they're disabled. The Meadows approaches everyone where they are at.
Mhm.
Leads at the very beginning, which is a very seamless process. I have told fellow meadow patients that I could have hated all of the therapy there. Spoiler alert, I didn't. But let's say hypothetically I did. The community was